Hello and welcome back to the Valencia Property Podcast. As we have said a few times now, it's the only podcast that hasn't been sponsored by Spotify's filthy lucre. It's the only podcast known to mankind that isn't sponsored by HelloFresh, NordVPN, Shopify or ShipStation. Yes, it's the truly independent Valencia Property Podcast, and it doesn't rely on you signing up to our Patreon. You can't support us by buying a coffee or two on Ko-fi or Super Chats on YouTube. Just listen and enjoy, and maybe buy your Valencia property with us, or even use our sister company Stepping Stone Rentals to rent for a few months here in Valencia. In this month's podcast, we'll be talking about our blogs from the month, with emphasis on interest rates and mortgages when buying here, because you have to remember the economic background in Europe might well be different from your own country. Looking at you, United States. We'll also be looking at the market and the movements within it, and looking at who we are going to call a Valencian character. We could call him a nutter, we could call him a lot of things, but for now, we'll stick with character. Make sure to listen to the later part of our podcast today, when you will learn all you need to know and more about Carlos Recio. Who's Carlos Recio? Well, listen later, and you'll wonder why this guy isn't world famous. First though, let's take a look at what we've been doing this past month. Congratulations to everyone who completed on their property purchases in this month, ranging from a lovely little house in Bétera to an amazing fully modernised apartment in Ruzafa. We hope you all enjoy your new lifestyle here in Valencia, and welcome to all of our new tenants at Stepping Stone Rentals as well, who've been settling into the medium-term rentals before diving into their own personal searches for that long-term rental or that purchase in Valencia. On the blog this month, we introduced our new business division. We told you all about the events coming up this summer in and around Valencia, because you come here for the lifestyle, don't you? And you need to know a bit more about what that lifestyle may involve. We wrote about why making false economies doesn't work, what a false economy is, and why finding faults after the fact is never a good thing to do. We also talked about the current situation for mortgages and interest rates, and why getting a mortgage might be a very good strategy to get the property you want, while maintaining your own money in investments that could easily pay out more than the interest rate you're paying on the mortgage. So the reason we talked about mortgages was because my colleague Gavin sent me a graph showing the 30-year mortgage rates in the States that are now 7.5% fixed rate. I'm sorry, but that's mental. Who in the right mind would take that as a deal? Hands up if you have, by the way. Headwinds are coming to the property market for sure in the States. Meanwhile, in the UK, between 6 and 7%, apparently, it's still not great. Meanwhile, Spain's mortgages fall under the European Central Bank interest rates. Currently, you can get a 20-year fixed-rate mortgage offer for between 2.49% with discounts and 3.75%. The average is around 2.75, which is why we use that in the following example. We compared a 20-year fixed-rate mortgage in Spain at 2.75% with a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage in the USA at 7.5%. For the same amount, so 300,000 euros or dollars, there are some major takeaways that you need to understand when you're looking for a mortgage. So, the monthly payment on a 20-year mortgage in Spain is less than on a 30-year loan in the States. Here it costs you about 1,625 euros. There it'd be about 2,129. Secondly, the amount of interest to be paid back over the lifetime of the loan is massively different. So sit down before I say this. If you got the same loan, 300,000 in Spain and in the United States, you would save over $370,000 or euros in interest payments alone because of the difference in interest rates. That's before we factor in insurance for the loan that you need over the life of the loan. It's ridiculous. Your total cost of a purchase as a result on a 300,000 property is 390,000 in Spain. It's 766,000 in the United States. That is ridiculous. And as we mentioned earlier, there are strong headwinds in the USA property market at the moment, not only because of interest rates, meaning the value of a property could drop. And if you are forced to sell at any point, well, at that point you could have a big problem. Now, if we take the UK's rate and we'll take 6.5%, so between 6 and 7, and we'll take 6.5% and put that into the comparison, then we get the following figures. The monthly payment is actually more in this scenario at £2,237. But you still save $230,000 in interest payments compared with the 7.5% rate in the States. However, you do pay an extra $146,000 in interest over the same 20 years as a Spanish mortgage. So again, it makes sense buying in Spain and living in a cheaper country with better communications, infrastructure, and quality of life. Not to mention vibes. It just feels better. If you think that a mortgage in Spain might work for you at these really low interest rates, then contact our partners at Mortgage Direct. Obviously, there's a link in the show notes, and ask to work with them to get a pre-approval. This is very important, getting a pre-approval before you even start looking for a property. It's an essential first step on your route to becoming a property owner here in Valencia if you want a mortgage. And Mortgage Direct have the experience of working with all sorts of international clients from all sorts of backgrounds to get them finance at great rates. Also, take a look at the full process of getting a mortgage here in Spain at our full guide, also in the show notes. After all, forewarned is forearmed. There are a couple of things to bear in mind here when thinking about getting a mortgage. You're likely to be offered a maximum of 70% of the price of a house on a mortgage. You'll need to find 30% therefore for your down payment, and also 15% in costs. Don't forget that. This might be a higher down payment that you would need to find in the States or the UK, and also higher costs. Bear in mind though that ongoing costs are cheaper, a lot cheaper. And again, we've pointed this out in a previous post, and you can find that in the show notes. If you have the money available for the down payment, then living in Spain for 20 years will be considerably cheaper than living in the States or the UK, not only in terms of your mortgage costs, but when you factor in everything else that is cheaper, such as food, utilities, community fees, HOA, property taxes, insurances, health and car and home, for example, on the insurance, restaurants, and then not having to pay 30% on top for the tip, public transport, travel, and that none of this is increasing due to stupid tariffs imposed by an economic illiterate, and there's more stuff that's cheaper. And it looks really rosy here. But why would you get a mortgage? Well, as an American or Brit, it makes total sense to get a mortgage as part payment of your property purchase at these rates, because you don't decapitalise yourself, and at the same time, you can probably earn more on your savings in the States or in the UK than what you are paying out in interest payments here. If mortgage rates are high, then savings rates are high too. Obviously, in Spain, savings rates are really low. However, you might want to keep an eye out for currency risk, as the dollar depreciates as it retreats from being the reserve currency of the world because an idiot's in charge, and the pound depreciates because, well, Brexit and more. You may also want to take a look at a post we wrote last month about investment possibilities here. Just click on the link in the show notes about our business division. And yes, we are totally taking the piss with the title, The Art of the Deal in Valencia. But now, let's move on to something that has absolutely nothing to do with property, but so much to do with Valencia. Let's look at Carlos Recio, our character of the month. Now, honestly, I don't know if this is going to be a series because characters like Carlos, there aren't many of them. But let's have a listen about Carlos. Well, no, I say Carlos, because he's Valencian. So, meet Carlos Recio, the most unbelievable and wildly fascinating Valencian character you've never heard of. So who's the most intriguing character you've ever come across? Are you the type who obsesses over every detail of famous historical figures and the peccadillos? Or do you prefer the quirky, larger-than-life modern-day personalities that define everything to do with your own country or with Spain? People like Pedro Almodovar and that's it, really. Anyway, if you love a good story about eccentric, unforgettable characters, the kind that shape Spain's most vibrant cultural legends, then you're in for a treat. Because today we're introducing you to Carlos Recio, a man so bizarre, so multifaceted, and so utterly Valencian that you won't believe he's real. And no, we're not the ones telling this wild tale. Credit goes to Twitter user Javi Gomez and a YouTuber, Javi Alonso. They're both called Javi, of course. And Javi Alonso on YouTube is at Javier Alonso. He uncovered Recio's truly unbelievable life story. So it all starts with politics. Well, everything starts with politics in Spain. From politics to everything else in the case of Carles. It starts with his political career, because of course it does. Carles was a member of the Valencian Union. The Valencian Union was a far-right anti-Catalan party that helped secure the PP's first seats in the Valencian regional government back in the day. The Valencian Union were an actual real bunch of fascists, to tell the truth. But that's just the boring part of his life. Carles was also the ultimate civil servant, who never actually worked. For an entire decade, Carles perfected the art of doing absolutely nothing at his government job. Jealous? What? How did he do it, you may ask? Well, it was a simple plan. He'd clock in the morning, and again in the afternoon, and he wouldn't lift a finger in between. That's not true, actually. As soon as he'd clock in, he'd then walk home. And the hours he'd spent outside the office, he should have been working, of course, he would indulge his other proclivities. But we'll get to them later. Now, some more uncharitable souls might say, this is what all local government workers do. They clock in, do nothing, and then clock out. So why is Carles any different? But I couldn't possibly comment on that. Remember though, we're just getting started, because our mate Carles wasn't just a civil servant, he was also a bit of a dark horse in the rest of his life. And he had a side hustle. He was side hustling by being, are you ready for this? A gay brothel owner. Yes, you heard that right. Ultra-right-wing fascist absentee civil servant and gay brothel owner in his house. And yes, he still collected his government salary the entire time, just to supplement the earnings from his brothel. Oh, and speaking of his house, in the show notes there's a link to the photo of his house from the outside. It sits somewhat incongruously in the Monte Olivete area of Valencia and is, shall we say, a little esoteric. Imagine living next door, or even slightly worse, opposite, and waking up to that view every day. And remember, he had an underground gay brothel in there, so lots of people coming in and out. But wait, it gets better. That's not all Carles did. Carles decided that his real talent and how he would fill his time when he wasn't working at the town hall, overseeing his gay brothel, or leading a fascist political party with a bit of clout in Valencia, was to write and draw comic book superheroes. So let me introduce you to Fallarella, Españolísima, Ferminua, and more. The superheroes you never knew existed. So if you thought Spain's folklore couldn't get any wilder, because, let's face it, an ultra-Catholic country with repressed urges tends to deliver these things in spades, think again. Fallarella was a superheroine inspired by Valencia's iconic Fallas festival. Fallarella was a fiery superheroine. If you thought Valencia's Fallas festival was all about giant ninots, fireworks, paella, think again. Because hidden in its history is Fallarella, the satirical, over-the-top superheroine dreamed up by our mate Carles. Who was Fallarella? Well, imagine a comic book heroine from the chaotic, irreverent spirit of the Fallas, a larger-than-life satirical take on classic superheroes, but with a distinctly Valencian twist. Powers? Well, it probably involved fire resistance, because Fallas. Essential for surviving the crema, the burning of the Fallas on the last night. The costume? Superhero, so you get what you expect, the traditional fallera dress, but a hugely exaggerated cleavage, of course, a cape and a mask, because why not? No capes. Mission: to fight Fallas injustice, or maybe just to mock it spectacularly. Fallarella was Recio's way of blending Valencia's most iconic festival with the absurdity of comic book tropes. And if that sounds bizarre, just wait. She wasn't alone. Fallarella was just one superhero in Recio's bizarre universe. Recio didn't just create one satirical superhero, he built an entire rogue gallery of them. Españolísima was an ultra-patriotic, read majorly fascistic-leaning, counterpart. Ferminua, well, that was based on Pamplona's fiestas, San Fermin and the bull running, so Ferminua was Pamplona's bull running heroine. And then, slightly incongruously, Antinous and Lesbianetta, the LGBTQ plus dynamic duo. Do you think he was sheltering something from his ultra-right-wing mates apart from the gay brothel in his house? Fiorella was special though, because she embodied the exaggerated drama, humour and rebelliousness of the Fallas themselves. Now, Fiorella, of course, wasn't real. Unlike the actual Fallas monuments, which are real for a short period of time until they're burnt, Fiorella has never physically existed. She was part of Recio's fictional comic book world, and it was a parody of both superhero culture and Valencian traditions. But in a way, she perfectly captured the spirit of the Fallas. Over-the-top spectacle? Check. Social satire? Check. A touch of madness? Yeah, check. 100% check. And why does Fiorella matter? Because she proves that even in satire, Valencia's culture shines. The Fallas Festival has always been about pushing boundaries. And Recio, in his own bizarre way throughout his whole life, took the idea to the extreme in every single aspect of his life. So next time you're in Valencia for the 19th of March, take a moment to imagine Fiorella watching over the chaos, Kate fluttering in the smoke of the crema, because honestly, she fits right in. But Recio didn't stop at that. He did everything. And he did it big style. So the verdict. This man was a legendary character. Is Carlos Recio the most fascinating Valencian character you've never heard of? Absolutely. We can't find anyone who is more Valencian and more weird than Carlos. And if you think we've covered all the madness, just wait, because this man's life was so absurd, so unpredictable, that you'll be questioning reality by the time you finish looking into him more online, because you're going to do that, aren't you? Google Carlos Recio and prepare to head down a wormhole into a different world. Valencia never fails to surprise us. And that's our podcast for this month. If you enjoyed this month's podcast, share it with your friends and on your social media feeds. You might want to hashtag it with Carlos Recio, for example. Contact us at information@valencia-property.com to tell us more about what you are looking for in Valencia. And maybe when you're here, just pay homage to Carlos by visiting Monte Olivete and looking at his house in person from the outside when you get there. Don't think of going in. I don't think the gay brothel is working anymore. Just don't think of going in, just in case. Until next month, this is Graham at the Valencia Property Podcast, signing off. We look forward to hearing from you as soon as possible and helping you to find your perfect property in Valencia.